All right, well, good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. It is my pleasure to welcome Premier Doug Ford to Alberta for an announcement that is in every way as historic as the Calgary Stampede that he's been attending over the last couple of days, and is every bit as exciting. I'd like to acknowledge that both of us have ministers and members of our teams in the room as well, and I'd like to welcome the Honourable Stephen Lecce, who is Ontario's Minister of Energy and Mines, the Honourable Kinga Surma, Ontario's Minister of Infrastructure, and MPP Will Boma, the Parliamentary Assistant to the Premier, Minister of Indigenous Affairs and First Nations Economic Reconciliation, Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs and Minister of Northern Economic Development and Growth to Alberta. He's got a very long title.
Thompson.
And Minister Thompson as well. All right, and Minister Thompson, who I will let the Premier tell you a little bit more about his portfolios. Oh, gosh. Okay, missed a couple. He's going to go. I'd also like to acknowledge Alberta's Minister of Energy and Minerals, the Honourable Brian Jean. We've got Alberta's Minister of Jobs, Economy, Trade and Immigration, the Honourable Joseph Scow, Alberta's Minister of Transportation and Economic Corridors, the Honourable Devin Dreeshen, and Alberta's Minister of Infrastructure, the Honourable Martin Long, are here as well. Did I miss any of my people? All right, I think we've got a few more that are outside as well. We're also joined by guests from energy companies that have strong ties in both Alberta and Ontario. And today marks an important step forward in uniting our country as Alberta joins forces with Ontario to pursue our shared goals of economic growth, opportunity and prosperity. We're signing 2 memorandums of understanding that will see us advance pipelines and pathways to boost exports of homegrown energy and critical minerals to markets across Canada and across the world, and work collaboratively to support both Ontario's automotive industry as well as Alberta's liquor manufacturing industry, industries that contribute substantially to our provincial economies. The first of these agreements formalizes our commitment to working together to maximize the economic value of Canada's energy resources and enhance Canada's energy security and global competitiveness. We're uniting with Ontario to amplify our voices and double down on our efforts to carve a path forward together for Alberta, for Ontario, and for Canada. Through this agreement, we'll work together to explore ways to improve networks and corridors that better connect our energy and critical minerals to markets here at home, as well as international markets around the globe. We'll focus on supporting industry efforts to build oil and gas pipelines and refining, processing, and supply chains for energy and critical minerals between Alberta and Ontario. We'll work towards accelerating our exports across industries. And that means we're seeking to add more rail lines to increase capacity and enhance access to ports, including to sites in James Bay and southern Ontario. And we will share expertise to advance development of nuclear energy solutions so our provinces can keep up with the ever-growing demand on Alberta and Ontario's electricity grids. We know there's strength in taking a united front, but we cannot achieve our shared provincial goals without cooperation from the federal government. It's vital that the federal government gets fully on board with creating the conditions necessary to strengthen Canada's economy and competitiveness, improve investor confidence, and grow productivity. Ottawa must answer our calls and remove all federal barriers that have harmed Canada's ability to grow the energy sector and other industries such as mining and manufacturing. And this includes, but is not limited to, repealing or amending the Impact Assessment Act and the oil tanker ban. We're also working to repeal the net zero power regulations and the proposed oil and gas production cap. We also call on the federal government to repeal their electric vehicle mandate that comes into effect next year. Last year, only 4.2% of the cars sold in Alberta were zero-emission vehicles. And the federal government's EV mandate says that 20% of cars sold in 2026 must be zero-emissions vehicles. We buy about 200,000 cars, so that would be about 40,000 cars. So we would have to buy nearly every single zero-emission vehicle manufactured in Ontario last year to hit the 20% target, and we're just one province. So removing federal barriers will allow Alberta and Ontario to attract investment and project partners we need to get shovels in the ground, grow industries, and create jobs. I'm excited to continue collaborating with Ontario so we can reach our shared goals, including to advance pipelines and responsible energy development. I am also pleased to partner with Premier Ford to support the growth of 2 other major industries of significance to Alberta and Ontario. The second memorandum of understanding outlines Alberta's commitment to explore ways to prioritize the purchase of made-in-Canada vehicles for our government fleets in a show of support for Ontario's automotive industry. And it sets the stage for Ontario's government to work with Alberta to explore ways to find additional opportunities to improve the interprovincial trade of liquor products to create even more opportunity for our producers. Today's signing marks an historic partnership founded in a mutual ambition to reach the full potential of our provinces, to grow our list of global customers for our energy resources, and to achieve long-term prosperity for all Canadians. I'll now turn it over to Premier Ford to speak more about today's MOUs.
Well, good morning, everyone, and boy, I've had a great time here in Alberta, and I love Calgary and the people here. There's an amazing group of folks that live here. It's my pleasure to be here with so many members of our government. I know you run through them. I'm going to run through them one more time. Minister Lecce, Minister Surma, Minister Thompson, Minister Oosterhoff, and PA Will Boma. I want to start by thanking my friend Danielle Premier Smith. Thank you for hosting us with this great city of Calgary and mine. You know, I got to tell my friends in Ontario, you want to come to a happening place, come to Alberta, come to the Stampede. You're going to have a great time in this beautiful province of Alberta. It's absolutely stunning here. Nothing showcases the wild rose spirit like the Calgary Stampede. The people of Alberta have been such gracious hosts. Thank you for your hospitality. Friends, I'm here with Premier Smith today because it's never been more important for Canadians to stand united from coast to coast to coast. President Trump's tariffs and the economic uncertainty they've created, they're hurting workers and businesses in every part of our great country. Steelmakers and aluminum workers in Ontario and Quebec, fishermen and women in British Columbia and Atlantic Canada, farmers across the prairies, including right here in Alberta, miners across Canada's beautiful north. No region has been spared. In the face of uncertainty, Canadians are coming together to stand up for our country and build a stronger, more united Canada. That's why just a few weeks ago, Premier Smith and I were in Saskatoon to sign a historic agreement to unlock free trade between Alberta and Ontario. Over the last few months, Ontario has signed agreements with a total of 6 provinces to support free trade across Canada. We're doing this because we need to unlock the full potential of our economy. We need to tear down the barriers and red tape that have held us back for far, far too long. We need to make Canada more competitive, more resilient, and more self-reliant. We need to build the future for Canada where we can proudly stand tall, strong, united, and independent, so we can stand up to President Trump's tariffs and anything else that comes our way. That's what brings us here today, to sign 2 new agreements between Alberta and Ontario that will open access to new markets and create thousands of new jobs across Canada. These agreements are transformational. Ontario and Alberta are working together to build new energy and trade infrastructure, including pipelines and rail lines, so we can unlock the full potential of Canada's economy by diversifying our trading partners and bringing our natural resources to new customers and new markets. Built using Ontario steel, new pipelines would connect Western Canadian oil and gas to existing and potential new refineries in Southern Ontario. They will also expand export opportunities, bringing Western oil and gas to new tidewaters right across the world, including by way of a potential new James Bay deep sea port in Northern Ontario. New rail lines would connect Ontario's Ring of Fire region, critical mineral mining projects, and processing facility to Western Canadian ports as we build an end-to-end critical mineral supply chain. This is how we diversify our trading partners. This is how we make ourselves less reliant on the United States. This is how we secure the future of Canada. To move these ambitious projects forward, Ontario and Alberta will soon launch a joint feasibility study to determine the best route for economic and energy corridors, make recommendations on what financing and commercial tools might be needed to de-risk, and learn how we can best support homegrown supply chains, including Ontario's steel sector and our great steel makers. As we build the future of Canada, we will always meet our duty to consult with Indigenous partners and support their involvement with historic funding to help First Nations become equity partners in these nation-building projects. This agreement is a big step forward. To succeed, to build a more competitive, resilient, and self-reliant future, we need the federal government to do its part. We need the federal government to cut red tape and bring regulatory certainty so Canada can attract the kind of private sector investments that will be critical to build this energy and trade infrastructure. No one will build a pipeline to Tidewaters if there's a ban on tankers. This is the craziest thing I've ever heard, a ban on tankers. No one will invest in opening a mine if it takes 15 years to get it to yes. It's time to end excuses, and it's time to start building, and we need to start building now. As part of our agreements today, we've also agreed that Alberta will prioritize Canadian-made vehicles for its government's fleets. For our part, Ontario will support the increased availability of Alberta beer, wine, and spirits, and they have some great wine and spirits and beer coming. You could just see it outside. Everyone's having a few cold ones on Ontario store shelves. Friends, this is how we protect Canada. We need to protect together to unlock the country's full potential. We need to build infrastructure that will bind Canada together and support workers in every part of the country. We need to respect and celebrate every province, every territory, and do everything in our power to help workers, businesses, and communities thrive. I'm honored to do my part to help the amazing people of Alberta, and I thank my friend, Premier Smith, for helping the people of Ontario. We're going to keep working to build Canada. We're going to stand united. We're going to protect the true north, strong and free. Thank you, and may God bless the people of Canada. Thank you.
I think I'm going to the far end.
me tell you a funny story yesterday, Danielle? Okay, so we're sitting at the table, and I just got this belt buckle. See how it only has two little things and a big gut like mine, pop these things out. So as soon as they said, Premier Ford, come up, bang, my belt buckle fell off. And that was it. I was doing,
So he had a choice of whether to put it back on or just whip the belt right off. And he whipped the belt off, and I was saying to Scott, if his pants fall down during
that would not be good. I have a body like Arnold Schwarzenegger, but pretty good. I had it right with the first one. That's it. Crazy good. That's good.
All right.
Oh, this is a beauty.
And once you get that on, feel free to come back to the podium.
So we'll start the media Q&A here in a minute. We are on a tight schedule, so if we keep the questions short, we'll try to have the premiers keep their answers short as well, so we can take as many questions as possible. We'll start off with questions here in the room first. One question, one follow-up. State your name and outlet for the record. And we'll start off with our first at the mic.
I'll just wait for him to get his belt sorted out.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. All right.
Yeah.
We're good.
Go ahead.
Emma Graney with the Globe and Mail. On the pipelines front, I'm curious what your actual plan is. There's not necessarily a whole lot of love for oil pipelines necessarily heading east. So what can we expect in terms of concrete, where it might start, where it might go?
Well, first of all, I'd say we have done lots of polling on the attitude towards pipelines. And in every single province, it's a majority, and in some cases well above 70%. I don't think Ontario is any different. Ontario, I think, knows that with Line 5 right now, it goes through Michigan to feed Sarnia, and that puts them in a precarious position. The governor of Michigan has been trying to shut that pipeline down for years, and so we have always felt that having a made-in-Canada solution with a pipeline option going to not only Ontario and Quebec, it just makes sense from an energy security point of view. And the world changed in November. And I think Canadians understand that we've got to start acting like a country. We've got to start supporting each other. And I think that is the prevailing sentiment in the country. But I'll let Premier Ford speak for his own people.
Well, thank you, Premier Smith. Premier Smith was bang on. We have the governor of Michigan constantly threatening to close down the pipeline. Do you know the disaster that would create in Ontario? It would basically shut down Pearson International Airport, largest airport in the country. Prices would go through the roof. I'm tired of relying on the United States. And let's make no mistake about it. I love the U.S. I love the American people. But there's one person that's causing a problem right now, and that's President Trump. We want to move forward. We want to build the AMCAN fortress. But the days of relying on the United States 100%, they're done. They're gone. We're going to start being reliant and self-reliant on each other. We have the strongest. We're an economic powerhouse in Canada. We're going to continue growing, free trade being one within all the provinces. That will add over $200 billion to our economy, anywhere up to 6% of our GDP. We have to start diversifying our trade right across the world. People would love great Alberta oil, that love products, critical minerals from Ontario. That's what we start doing, and stop being reliant on our neighbors to the south, because there's uncertainty right now and it's hurting our country.
And the fact these are MOUs, I mean, sometimes MOUs don't get a whole lot of traction. What makes this one different? Well,
what makes a difference, we're doers. There's a lot of politicians that are talkers, and the federal government, not the present one, because we're hoping we're going to be able to work with the present federal government. But for far too long, for 10 years, under Prime Minister Trudeau, they were treated terribly. The West was treated terribly, Saskatchewan and Alberta. And as I said in our meeting, and you heard it, Premier Smith, we got to start showing respect. Ottawa has to start showing respect to the great folks in the West, especially Saskatchewan and Alberta. I'll hand it over to you.
Scott Strasser, Post Media. Question for Premier Smith. Prime Minister Carney was in Calgary over the weekend. Did you speak to him or any other members of the Liberal government?
I kept running into ministers. I feel like we're getting love bombed right now. Everywhere I look, there's a new, either a prime minister or a new a federal Liberal minister, and that's positive. I think they're out here. They're hearing direct feedback about how frustrated the energy industry has been from the last 10 years of bad laws. No one's sugarcoating it. That's what the feedback that I'm getting as well. So they're getting it pretty straight, and I'm glad they're hearing it. And so I did happen to have a crossover with the Prime Minister at the Carpenters Union event, and he and I chatted a little bit about his pancake flipping technique, which needs a little work. And that's fine. He can come back and do some more practice. But I understand that he told the media there that he thinks a bitumen pipeline to the northwest BC coast is very likely to be on the large projects list. And I think that is a very positive sentiment. We've got a little bit of work to do to see what that will look like. But we've been very actively engaged with the pipeline companies, asking them what they think the best projects are. And notwithstanding the project that we hope to work on today to James Bay, having an access to the northwest BC coast is essential to being able to get to Asian markets, and that's the one that we hear the most enthusiasm for. So we'll work with the Prime Minister on that and hope to have some good news in that regard in a few months.
Thanks.
Hi, Chris Farco with the Calgary Herald. This is a question for both of the premiers. It's been several years anyway since the Energy East project died. So I'm wondering, how will this MOU actually lead to a west-east pipeline going forward? Under what timelines, and how are you going to get a private sector participant involved?
I would say that let's work with the different options that we have on the table right now, and there's many ports we can go to. I mean, we've talked about 3 ports really on the BC coast. We've talked about a port up in Grays Bay, potentially port at either Churchill or Port Nelson. This one would be a port at James Bay, and the idea behind that would be, let's get some icebreakers in there, maybe build out some additional rail and road infrastructure, and then it could be a multi-purpose port, not just for oil pipelines, gas pipelines, propane, but also food, fiber, manufactured goods, and critical minerals. That to me is where I think that I would like to go with this MOU with the Premier of Ontario, and that allows for us to get not only the product out and over to our friends on the East Coast by ship, but we can also get it onto Europe. So if that is in the realm of possible, then let's work on that. And then maybe I'll sign another MOU with my friend Francois Legault at some later point to see if we can get further east.
Well, you're asking about investment. First of all, you have to get the buy-in from the provinces, so we're going east, and I'll tell you, Ontario is 100% in on this project. We had the opportunity, myself and Premier Smith, to meet with a tremendous amount of business people in the energy sector. And I'll never forget, as one person said, there's tens of billions of dollars we want to invest in Canada, but the regulatory burden is just ridiculous. I don't want to bring my money down to Texas. I don't want to bring it down to North Carolina. These are the opportunities and the jobs we're losing, Canadians are losing, because just regulatory bodies and it's just red tape, regulation. We need to get rid of all the red tape and regulations. We could be the most prosperous, strongest, richest, wealthiest country in the entire world. I'll never forget when I met with our First Nations partners when I was in Toronto, and one of the chiefs said, we could be like Saudi Arabia. I almost jumped over the table and hugged the guy. This is the mindset we need. We need everyone working together. We need to give prosperity to everyone, including First Nations communities, the provinces, the territories, our great country, and most important, the people of Canada. That's what we need to do. There has never been an opportunity that I've seen that the province, the federal government, First Nations communities are working together, and that's how we make things happen, and that's how we become the most prosperous nation in the entire world.
Follow-up question for Premier Smith. Looking west to the Port of Prince Rupert, you talked about having discussions with pipeline companies. What's the status of those talks? And what's also the status of the talks with the Pathways Alliance? Are you confident you can get a deal on both fronts this year?
We are linking those two projects together. I know that the Pathways group of companies have been advocating for their Pathways project for some time, and even predates me. And it's a net zero by 2050 proposal that would include carbon capture, utilization, and storage, would include decarbonizing production through things like perhaps hydroelectric power, maybe small modular reactors. That's part of their plan. And then direct air capture for kind of that last mile. And we've got carbon engineering that is returning to Alberta, and a direct air capture facility in central Alberta as a result of that. So I feel like they have done a lot of work on scoping out what that project would look like. I know that they have been talking with the federal government. The federal government has expressed enthusiasm for that. But we have said that you can't just add $20 billion of additional cost to the industry. There has to be additional revenues to pay for it. Whether you are able to use the CO2 for enhanced oil recovery, that becomes a revenue stream, or whether you're able to build a new bitumen pipeline for export. If we had a 1 million barrel per day bitumen export pipeline off the West Coast, that would generate at today's prices $20 billion a year for GDP, of which governments get, somewhere around 40% of that, year after year after year. So you put that into context over a 20 or 30 or 40 year period with a $10 to $20 billion investment in carbon capture, that makes sense. But just putting additional cost on an industry and then threatening them with production caps through an emissions cap, that doesn't make sense. So those two conversations have to happen together. I would hope that we would see... It needs to be fast. I would hope that if we're going to have a 2 years to yes, then we have to have a months to first step, right? So I'm intending for there to be, we would hope be able to move forward by the fall, that we would have something concrete. I'd love to see it on the project list by the fall.
We have time for a couple more questions. We'll go to next.
Chris Brown, Cross Border Network. This question is for Premier Ford, actually, and then I'm hoping that Premier Smith can respond as well. More and more communities and businesses are looking at SMRs out here in Alberta and in Saskatchewan. I know Darlington is underway with their updates and their SMR. How important is it for businesses and communities out in Alberta and Saskatchewan to look at can-do reactors rather than the alternatives right now as we sign this MOU around energy and resources?
Well, I'll just address the SMRs. We're leading the G7 in small modular reactors. Minister Lecce's done an incredible job. He's been flying all over the world. He already has some orders. And I want to include everyone right across our country because that's the way of the future. Clean, green, reliable, cost-effective energy. And every person I talk to in the U.S., the great governors, the senators, the congressmen and women, first thing they want to talk about is their energy. Because as you see, these data centers popping up all over the place, they only employ about 10 people, the actual physical building, but what it does, it attracts tech companies like the Amazons and the Googles, and that's where the jobs are created because they just suck an endless amount of energy, these data centers. So that's the way of the future. We're leading the world, and we're going to make sure we share that technology right across the country.
And I would say that the small modular reactors probably make the most sense at rural, remote sites that also have a very heavy energy use, like our oil sands projects are perfect for it, if you can get both power and steam, power and heat. But I would also say that when we were first starting to talk about a can-do reactor, we thought that with the project being proposed, in Peace Country area, they're talking about 4,000 megawatts. We initially thought, wow, that would swamp our power grid. And now with all the demands for AI data centers, we're thinking, that's maybe exactly what we need. So our parliamentary secretary for affordability and electricity, Chantal de Jong, she's going to be doing a nuclear consultation beginning, I understand, in September, October. So we want to talk to Albertans, because it's new for us. It's not new for Ontario. Ontario gets 60% of their power, I understand, on their grid from nuclear energy. New Brunswick has nuclear power, and is that the only one? New Brunswick and you, and maybe Saskatchewan as well is a little bit further ahead than us on that. But we have fantastic technology that was pioneered in Ontario. So I would say that the world that we're moving towards with energy is all of the above. And so we'd be looking at yes, both small modular nuclear when they become available, but the can-do reactors as well as one that's under active discussion in the Peace region.
So you specifically mentioned the Northern Lights plant that might be going operational, but might be going through. There's consultations that the community is doing alongside businesses. Are you in support of nuclear then?
Yes, I have been for some time. We signed an MOU, and that predated me. We signed an MOU with Saskatchewan, Ontario, and New Brunswick to collaborate on nuclear, and we've recommitted to that. So yes.
And we have time for one last question. We'll take that in the room here.
Good morning, Premier Smith, Premier Ford. My name is Jen Hodson from the Western Standard. I'm directing my question at you, Premier Smith, but maybe you both can weigh in. So Prime Minister Mark Carney has said that he's amicable to the one pipeline in BC. So is that enough?
I would say that it depends very much on where you think the world is going. There are a number of forecasting companies that don't do forecasting, they do backcasting, meaning they say, where do we want to be ideologically by 2050, and what would we have to do today to reduce production to get there? I would prefer to deal in the world of reality. And in the world of reality, we have 5 billion people on the planet who want the same standard of living as the industrialized countries. They are going to need energy from all sources to be able to get there. And so if you look at OECD, which does forecasting, they think by 2050 the world is going to need about 120 million barrels a day, up from about 104 today. So if it's a growing market, I think the world would benefit from having more supply from a reliable, friendly, safe neighbor like Canada, especially with the heavy oil product that we provide, because it gives a lot of options in developing asphalt, building materials, lubricants, petrochemicals, and so on. There's a lot of versatility in the product. So we are very much of the view that if we're going to see a growing share, Canada should have a growing share, and Alberta should have a growing share. So if we'd had the Energy East, if we'd had Keystone XL, if we had Northern Gateway, we would be producing 2.5 million barrels a day, more than we are today. That would have been generating somewhere in the order of, I don't know, $60 billion a year in revenue for the country. And that would have, and as again, 40% of that revenue going to various governments. That would go a long way towards allowing us the dollars that we need to meet our NATO international target for spending, or any of the social programs that we value. And I think that this is maybe the new understanding that we need to have. If you want to provide the supports for your people, you have to generate the revenue so that you have the money there. The model we've been using for the last 10 years has been borrow, 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 print money, and see inflation. It doesn't work. How about we try a different approach? Let's make sure that every single part of our economy is ticking on all cylinders. Let's make sure that all of our wealth creators and job creators have the ability to do that. And then governments can talk about what their priorities are for the revenue that gets generated as a result. That's the world I think we're moving to. So I'm of the view that there's probably room for more than one pipeline, probably several.
Well, thank you for that, Premier Smith. I've been promoting building pipelines west, east, north, and south. As you just heard Premier Smith say, 2.5 million barrels is our potential. And that's just in Alberta. That's not talking about our great neighbor, Saskatchewan, and up in Newfoundland, Labrador, and a few other places. That's what we need to do. We need to be an economic powerhouse, an energy powerhouse around the world. And we need the $60 billion, as Premier Smith said, to build our infrastructure, healthcare. And rather than just, as you were saying, Premier Smith, rather than just continuously print money, that hasn't worked. We need to unleash the opportunities, no matter if it's the great oil here in Alberta or the critical minerals or the energy that we have in Ontario. That's what we need to do. The door is open. We need to go through that door and tell the world Canada is open for business. Thank you.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
And just to follow up on that, so do you believe that Prime Minister Carney is actually going to play ball, or is he just talking the talk?
Well, there'll be a moment where the rubber hits the road. Like, you can only talk the talk for so long before you start putting some real action around it. That's why I've been saying I'd like to see by the fall. That's my target, is to try to get our projects on the project list by the fall. I don't know if you.
Well, let's give Prime Minister Carney an opportunity, and there's going to be a time that we're fully in or we aren't. And I'll tell you one thing: Prime Minister Carney is no Justin Trudeau. He's a business mind. He's run massive multi-billion-dollar businesses, and he's bringing the business approach to the federal government that hasn't had that approach in the last 10 years. He wants to get things going. He comes from Alberta. He believes in prosperity, opportunity. He believes in cutting waste, because we've seen the federal government, grow by 40%. So I have all the confidence that he's going to listen to the premiers and straighten out the federal government once and for all, and get rid of the red tape and regulations and let's see what happens there. But I'm giving Prime Minister Carney the benefit of the doubt. So far, so good, and I wish him all the best with dealing with President Trump as well, because that's going to be a big area of that we can get rid of the uncertainty. But thank you, everyone. Again, Premier Smith, thank you for your hospitality. Thank you for this fabulous belt buckle. I'll wear it proudly, and that's it.
We're looking forward to coming to your place.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, thanks, folks.
Thank you.